Hello. This is a re-upload, re-edit of a series of videos I did this time last year. I took them down around May time because these were created for an online pal who, in a weird act of synchronicity, passed around the time I took them down. Again, don't ask. I have these strange psychic abilities. But I thought, well, you know, on reflection, they might be useful to someone else, and I'm re-uploading them. I'm edited them into one long video. It's a 4-parter. The first part is an introduction to live looping, the concepts, the equipment you might need. The second part is learning how to count, because you have to learn how to count with looping. It's all about timing. The third part is about the idea of synchronous looping. That's where all the elements fit together, you know, in time with each other. And the fourth part is asynchronous looping. These are terms I've coined, where you may have loops that drift in and out of time with each other, which is useful for generative music or generative ambient music. So yeah, it's a 4-parter. It goes on for a little bit of time, and I'll put chapter markings in so you can skip forward and ahead, or back again if you so wish. Hopefully you'll find this enjoying, a little bit of enjoyment out of it, or a little bit of enlightenment, I don't know. But yeah, anyway, this was for Alan, but now it's for you. Thank you for watching. Take it away, Darren. Hello. This, I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm doing. Do you know what I'm doing? Looping. Alan. Dear Alan, it's not been well. And he sent me an email about looping. So I thought, could do some videos about looping. Start with the basics and explain my technique, if you can call it that. Excuse any noise you can hear in the background, because you know I live in a house with people, and so people will be doing things, and you may hear them in the background because I'm not a professional YouTuber. But yeah, looping. What is looping? Looping is where you build up music, well, basically using short loops of music like that, and then you add more loops on top. Now I tend to use guitars. That's my thing that you can use it with. You can use synthesizers, drum machines, a whole plethora. Voice, you can even use the voice to loop. There are two kinds of looping. There's synchronous, where all the loops run in parallel, and so they're perfectly in time. There's going to be a lot of me doing this. So they work in time with each other. They are synced. They are in sync. They continue to move along together, and so all the notes kind of, you know, sit nicely. And then there's asynchronous looping, where the loop lengths can be different lengths, and so things can drift in and out of sequence. Synchronous looping you tend to use for more song things that, you know, people want to hear. Whereas asynchronous, you tend to use that for ambient or generative music. So the loops play off each other and they're constantly evolving. But we're going to talk about that in another video. We're just talking about the basic principles of looping at the moment. So how do we loop? Oh, that's a tricky one. At the moment, on the floor, you can't see it, I'm using a looping pedal, the Boss RC300. There are many different looping pedals out there. You can even do some looping using delay pedals, depending, you know, the kind of delay pedal that you're using. I'll leave you to figure that one out. But I will be talking specifically about the Boss RC300 loop station. There's a newer one out. You know, this is fairly old. I've had this for many years, but it works for me. It allows me to do synchronous and asynchronous looping with no problem. There are 3 stereo loops, and that works for me. You may use software. Ableton Live allows you to loop. I don't know anything about that. I've never used it. There are plugins that you can get that do looping within your DAW. I don't tend to use them because I've never been satisfied with them. The hardware route is the best route for me, and that's what I'm using. So I'm using the RC300. Like I say, it's up to you to find the best equipment. I'm just talking from my experience. Again, nobody was out there when I started doing this. There was nobody to tell me what to do. I've had to find this all my own way. So if I'm helping, that's great. If I'm not, you may go and find a better way or your own way of doing things. So yeah, that is the basic principle of looping. And the next video in this, we're going to be talking about, well, the most important part of looping is that's rhythm. We're going to be talking about the singularly most important thing that you need to learn when it comes to making loop-based music, and that is a sense of rhythm. You're going to need to be able to, well, count to 4 or 3, or how many beats you're going to record, but you're going to have to get used to counting. Again, this is not something I've ever had to really think about because over the years I've just kind of fallen in to doing this. But why do you need to count? Why do you need to have a good sense of rhythm? Well, it's because of the beginning and ending of the loop. Now, again, in the previous video I was explaining I use a hardware looper, the Boss RC300 loop station, and I have to punch in using my foot. Using my foot, I have to punch in and out to begin and end the loops. Now, the very first loop in the sequence, now I've got the option of three stereo loops, and for me, the first loop that you lay down is the most, obviously it's the most important loop if you're making synchronous loops, synchronous music, because it's the bed, it's the bedding, it's the loop that all the other loops attach to, and so that one has to be rock solid. It can't be a little bit off. And when you first start trying to create looping music, you will find yourself just maybe a little bit out on the count. And this is something you need to get used to. You need to get used to just counting to 4, you know. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? The tricky part is pushing the pedal on the 1 and then disengaging on the next one, not on the 4, right? So let's try that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's how you do it. You have to click in on the 1 and click out on the next one, so you have the space between the 4 and the 1 of the loop. I know. I'm gonna try and do this with my voice. I've never done this before. This could either be amazing and brilliant or absolutely awful, but this should get you an idea of what we're aiming for. I mean, it can be 3, but we're doing it to 4, okay? It can be any length, but I'm just talking about hardware. Again, it might be different with software, I don't know, but we'll give it a go. I will be needing to put on the headphones of shame, where I'm going to hear my voice echoing, and I'm not going to like it. Ugh. Anyway, this should be fun. So I'm going to imagine you can see my feet. But this should be brilliant. So I'm going to count in on the 1, activate on the 1, and then punch out on the following one, anticipate it, if you know what I mean. So that's that space. Here goes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Notice there was a slight gap. So what I'm going to do here, without cocking it up, the way I've edited out all the cock-ups, is I'm going to count in, activate on the 1, and then anticipate the following one after the 4 to punch out, and so it'll be a seamless loop. That's the idea. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1. That was pretty tight, I think you'll agree. The clicking you can hear is because the microphone's picking up the clicking of the pedal. When I'm playing guitar, you don't get any of that. But that is something to bear in mind when you're using a microphone and looping. Your pedals will make all manner of clicks and pops and crackles that will be picked up by microphones. But you get the idea. It's that anticipation of the following beat, and that's where you punch out. And you're going to need to practice that an awful lot and get used to that idea of rhythm, that, you know, and that's where you've got to get used to. So get used to the idea of counting, and again, getting your feet and your brain in tune with each other. And again, if you're a guitarist, you've probably already got that ability because you use guitar pedals. If you're a keyboard player or somebody that, you know, doesn't use pedals a lot, it's going to be a little bit more of a difficult skill to pull off. So practice, get used to, like I say, counting and learning the rhythm. You have to kind of be a bit like a drummer in that respect, and to be very aware of the count and where the beat, the oncoming beat, is going to fall. So that is the really important lesson. That's the really important lesson of looping, and it's just about counting and nothing else. And once you can do that, you can do anything. Of course, if you're doing asynchronous looping, which we'll cover in the next chapter, episode, I don't know what you're going to call this, you don't need to worry about that. You don't need to worry about loop length or anything, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's just completely random, and that's what you want. But if you want to create little songs that are synchronous, you've got to learn to count, and you've got to learn to anticipate the entrance and exit beat, the 1 and the 1, or the space between the 4 and the 1. You've got to kind of anticipate that, because you will initially get it wrong, and it'll be too long or too short, and the beat will, the loop will stutter. The loop will be either too fast or too slow, and it will be noticeable. And that's why we've got to learn that. That's why it's important. Hopefully this has been useful, and I've edited out all the mistakes. I only got it wrong twice, and that was the first time was because I didn't have my headphones on. The second time is because I didn't have the volume up high enough on my headphones. I couldn't hear what I was doing. But you didn't need to know that. I let you peek behind the curtain. Anyway, thank you for watching. There'll be another one of these enlightening videos along soon. I'm doing this for Alan. All right, Alan? And hopefully this is useful for anyone who's interested in looping or creating loop-based music. And next time, I think I'm going to have to get the guitar out. Oh, God. I mean, this is when we're going to kind of come up with a loop that's going to work, and we're going to show what you can do with that loop, I think. What now? Well, what we're going to do is I'm going to do some looping stuff for you. But I'm going to keep it simple. Now, remember, I'm using the RC300 loop station, which has 3 stereo loops that I can use. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a guitar, and I'm going to put what I call the foundation loop in the middle, and then I use the 2 other stereo loops panned slightly to the left, slightly to the right, to augment what I've played. Again, this is something that it's just a technique that I've developed over the years. Again, you can do it differently. You don't have to copy what I'm doing. But because I use guitar, I like to have, like I say, the foundation loop in the middle. It's more of a production thing than anything else, a mix thing. And then left and right, we may add some picked guitar or some strummed guitar, you know, to taste. And then once the loop is playing, once we've got a nice loop going, that allows me to solo over the top of it, if that's what I'm going to do. Again, in this example, I'm just going to do something very, very simple, because everything I do is very simple, because I'm not a musician, in that I'm not somebody that can sit down and, you know, play other people's songs, you know, off the bat. I'm somebody that just plays for playing's sake. Okay. So what I do is fairly simplistic. But what's the key to it? Key to it is scales, and knowing your music theory. You do need to know a lot about scales. Now, with this thing I'm going to do next, I'm just going to be riffing on a single chord. I'm going to keep it simple. This first example, it's just going to be. I'm just going to go plain D. I like D. D's a nice. Nice scale. D for Darren. I'm going to play a D chord, get a nice rhythm going, and then just going to solo over the top of it. And that is the idea. But what I'll do is I'll also break away and show you the individual parts and how they kind of fit together. This is all improvised, by the way. I might add, you know, I say I've got it planned, but it tends to be more the feel, as I feel. Yeah, there will be, of course, there will be stylistic things, patterns that you fall back on, because you, as a player, you're going to do that. We all have our little comfort zones, but this is just more about showing you how these things fit together, rather than, you know. And then we'll do some, maybe as we go on. Again, this isn't planned. We'll do something a little bit more complicated, or look at different ways we can improvise with loops. So yeah, that was the example. I'm a little bit rusty because I've done a lot of looping for a long time. But hopefully it gives you an idea of how you can use looping. I mean, again, I use it in a very linear, simplistic way. It's more about, for me, it's more about creating an atmosphere and creating something with which to improvise over. Now, the improvisational part of it is important, and we'll be talking about that more in other videos because that's the really important part for me of the looping process, is to come to the moment either with a, well, again, is there an idea? Sometimes there is. Sometimes there is like an idea. I might have a riff or something that there's the seed. But very often I come to it completely fresh. And it's about reacting to myself and reacting to what goes down. Again, you might want to try and do something different with it. You might want to try and do something a little bit more structured. But that's not really where I get the big thing from. I like to, like I say, come to it more as an improvisational tool. So yeah, hopefully this example has been useful. It shows you a little bit of my process, simplistic process. Again, I'm not trying to, do anything amazing here. This is just something I've been doing for years. And yeah, maybe it's something you can give it a try, maybe refine and bring your own spin on it. So hopefully it's been useful, and next time around we'll be looking at asynchronous looping. Ooh, and how we can use that to create ambient or generative music. Tutorial thing where we're going to talk about asynchronous looping. Now, the idea behind that is you record loops of varying lengths and let them kind of drift in and out. They don't sync with each other like synchronous looping, obviously. Synchronous looping, everything's moving in parallel. Asynchronous, everything kind of moves in and out and phases in and out with each other. Again, not all loopers can do this, so you might need to check with your own equipment. But I'm using the RC300 by Boss, and that has a function where you can turn the sync off, and so you can do this thing. Now, it's got 3 stereo loops. I don't think you need to use more than that because it can become a little bit more complicated, a little bit more muddy. But this is just a sound thing. This is my preference. It might be different for you. You know, there are some loopers out there there's many loops, especially in software, as many loops as you like. But I'm quite happy with this. But yeah, the idea, what I'm going to do in a moment, is get the guitar and just play some notes and build up a loop. I might solo over it. Again, with this, you can use it to solo over, but you have to be a little bit more, I don't know, tasteful, because there is no central rhythm. This is more used for creating ambient music, i.e. there isn't a central melody or rhythm to track to, so it's more ethereal. It's more like a texture bed than anything else, so you have to bear that in mind when it comes to actually improvising over the top. But you can do this not just with guitars, you can do this with keyboards, any instrument you can do this, but you have to be very mindful of where the notes fall. It's more about finding space, and everything kind of drifting around each other. And it might take you a few goes, it might take you some practice to get used to the idea, because everyone's so used to playing to the beat, everything being in sync. To play out of sync and to understand how it works and to make successful asynchronous loops could take some practice, but again, that's for you to have a go at. I'm just here to give you the idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the headphones of shame on, and we're going to see what we come up with. Hopefully I get it right first time and I don't cock it up, and it will sound okay. So hopefully that showed you something you can do with asynchronous looping. A little bit rusty, haven't looped in a while. So new guitar, not quite used to it, but that's my excuses. I'm a bad player, I know that. But yeah, that's one application you can use. Now I don't know whether to do any more of these, because I've kind of done the basics. I mean, the only other thing is, you know, further instrumentation, you know, using percussion in looping, that kind of thing is something I could look at. You know, something I don't tend to do that often now because my setup's different, but yeah, there's lots of applications you can use for this. And again, you can also use it as an ideas launch pad, because you can go into looping and go places you wouldn't necessarily go. And then the great thing about using a DAW is you can then use those sketches and add to them, augment them, you know, tighten them up, turn them into almost proper songs. And you can do that even with this asynchronous stuff. It's really quite neat, I think, as a composing tool to take it to different places, especially if you are, you know, working on your own and you don't have the benefit of improvising with other people. It's a good way of improvising on your own. So anyway, that's part 4 of the looping tutorial thing. Hopefully it's been useful. Not many people have been watching these, so now you know why I don't bother doing many videos like this, because they're not that well received or found or discovered, I don't know. But anyway, thanks for watching, and who knows, maybe I'll do another one, I don't know, see what the feedback is. And that's it. My name's been Darren Rock. There's only one more thing to say, and by now you should know what that is, and that is indeed ta.